Aloha, and welcome to Hawaii Travel Made Easy, the podcast that helps you plan your dream Hawaiian vacation. I'm Marcie, a Hawaii travel expert who has visited the islands more than 40 times. And today, I'm excited to introduce my friend Celine Brewer, who just got back from Hawaii. She lives in Canada and actually runs Travel Banff Canada, a website dedicated to helping travelers plan their perfect Banff vacation. Are you ready to hear her honest thoughts on Hawaii? Let's jump in. Thanks so much for joining us, Celine.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited. Get to talk about something other than Banff, which of course I love, but nice for a change.
I love that. Well, can you give us a quick rundown of your trip? Like, where did you go and how long were you there and who did you travel with?
Yeah, so we spent 2 weeks on the Big Island. So we opted to not do any island hopping and just stay on one and do it thoroughly. So I was there with my husband and our two kids who are currently 11 and 9.
That's awesome. And why did you choose the Big Island for your trip?
So, being from Canada, we usually go away at Christmas and then we also have a week-long February break. And again, being from Canada, we usually go someplace warm. So we tend to find those two trips right back to back. We go someplace beachy and get antsy to go someplace active. So we started looking up, we've been to a lot of the national parks in the US and we were like, hey, we've never been to Hawaii, Volcano National Park. Let's go down there. So that was a big driver for us to pick there and just do something a little bit more active. So we basically went there to do more hiking with our kids.
I love that. And had you been to Hawaii before?
So I personally have been to Maui and Kauai and Oahu, and them a lot. My husband had never been, and our kids actually, a lot of their friends have been to Hawaii. So they've been begging us for years to go to Hawaii. So this was the first time that they were there. So it was fun to get to, go someplace with them that I had already been, aside from not having been to the Big Island, but yeah, and introduce them to that.
I love that. Well, what were their first impressions when they arrived? Like, did anything surprise them when they landed?
You know, that's a really hard one only because I feel like we do travel quite a lot with our kids. So I'd say that they're very used to us showing up and like, today we're hiking on a volcano and today we're going to so I don't think anything was overly surprising to them. I think my kids kind of go into it with all right, what are we doing now? Like, where are we at today? Yeah, and funny enough, we had just been to Iceland last summer. So going to the Big Island with how much like lava and stuff there really felt like, oh, okay, so we just pick places that have lava and volcanoes now.
And was Kilauea active when you were there?
It was, yes. So
Nice.
that was really cool. Yeah, I believe it was right after we landed that it was active, and it was only active for 22 hours. So at the time we were staying in Kona and we were not that far from it, but
Uh-huh.
we missed it. And
Gotcha.
so yeah, so we missed it then, and then as we went through our trip, we were even staying right outside of the national park, and we were watching every single night, "Is it gonna happen? Is it gonna happen?" And it didn't happen. We went up to Hilo, still close enough to go, didn't
Yep.
happen, and then we finally got all the way up north to our last place that we were supposed to be staying at, and we were about to go to bed. We just finished watching a show. My husband checked he had everything. He knew the live webcam, he knew like all of the websites to check for it. And it was like probably 9:30 and he's like, cuz I go to bed early. And he's like, "Oh my god, it's erupting right now. It just started." And so at that point, I believe the drive is like an hour and 45 minutes away.
Mhm.
And so we wanted to see it obviously in the dark.
Yeah.
So we set our alarms for 2:45 a.m. The kids had no idea we were doing this. They knew it was a possibility, but they had no idea. And so we woke everybody up 2:45 a.m. We all got in the car. Husband and I grabbed a coffee and off we drove to catch it cuz we wanted to make sure we were there before sunrise as well cuz
Yes.
we really
That
wanted
is
to
super
see,
important. Mhm.
right? Cuz we wanted to see the lava and the bright red in the dark. We didn't want it to start getting light. And you know what? Um it only was active for 13 hours that time. So had we waited till we got up, we would have missed it.
That is nuts. Wow, what a,
Yeah,
like, once in a lifetime
right?
experience.
And that's why
Yeah.
we were like, I mean, kids, they're like, "Oh, yeah." They're like, "Yeah, it's cool." But, my husband like, "Oh my God, like, let's go to the next viewpoint and see if we can see it better. And let's go to the next." And they're just like, "Oh, like, it's cool." Yes. But so, anyways, yeah, that was quite the experience we had there.
Oh, that sounds amazing, though. So I'm
Yeah,
guessing that that was probably one of the top highlights of your trip?
absolutely. Yeah, no, that was that for sure. And then, of course, the night snorkeling tour with the manta rays. Marcie, you may know this about me, but I'm obsessed with whales. Like I've been snorkeling with whales, humpback whales before. Like I've been on a million whale watching tours. And we had just done a whale watching tour, and so we were like, okay, we're gonna skip Hawaii for this one. But the other thing I've always wanted to see was a manta ray when I'm in the water with it. And so
Yeah.
when we found out it was there, I was like, "Oh, 100%, like, we need to do this." But then you, like, have the fact that it's night snorkeling, which we've
Uh-huh.
taken our kids on night things before, and that's a hard thing for little kids to do. Like, we've taken them to the, like, bioluminescent bays, and we were
Mhm.
in one in Colombia, and my son was 4 at the time, and he was just, like, so uncomfortable with being in the water in the dark. And I get
Yeah.
it, right? And, like, we've done the kayaking one in Puerto Rico, and again, he was, like, uncomfortable with the dark. So, when you do the manta ray one, which is, like, one of the coolest things I've ever done, he was like he was really brave. I was really shocked. He was the first one in the water. But at that
Wow.
point, my daughter was like, "I'm not getting in." And there was another family beside us, and the much, much older daughter was also like, "I'm not getting in." And I was like, "You guys gotta go. You gotta go." Like, the captain's like, "Everybody get in, get in, get in." Yeah, like, "You got it." So but it ended up being amazing, and, like, I could hear my kids, like, screaming underwater, and it was just, like,
Good screaming, right?
good screaming, like, "Oh my god, look at them," and, like, at one point, we had, like, 3 doing, like, barrel rolls underneath us, and it was just amazing,
Oh my
so
goodness.
highly
So how
recommend. Yeah.
close were you to the manta rays when you're in the water?
So, you get close enough that you can touch them. You're not
Gotcha.
obviously allowed to touch them, and one did rub up against my daughter's elbow and mine as it went by. That was us holding on and it, like, rubbing up
Okay.
against it, so we did not touch them intentionally, but yeah, so you're right there.
Wow. That sounds
Yeah.
amazing. I know that that's a highlight for so many people, and
Ugh,
I do
so
know that
cool.
there's tours that you can bring your kids, but they don't have to go in the water, like, they can
Mm,
stay on the boat. I know because so many families wanna do it, but their kids are young and don't wanna be in the water because it is dark and things are swimming around you, and it's a very unique experience. So, there are
yeah.
options. I know if people want to do it, but their kids aren't comfortable, or a spouse isn't comfortable, but they also want to go, you know? So
That's really good because actually the one that we booked it with, it was like, you absolutely have to be in the water, no
Mhm.
kids stay on the boat, so it's great to know that there's options where, people can have their kids just on the boat. Because at that point, we were unsure if both of our
Right.
kids were going to get in, and we kinda told them, like, "You don't have a choice because I wanna
Yeah,
be in, so you gotta go."
totally.
So
Oh my gosh. Well, so besides the manta rays and the lava, obviously, were there any specific activities like beaches or hikes or tours that really stood out to you on your trip?
yeah, so for sure, absolutely. Like, the manta rays are always gonna just be the answer for everything. But, we went down to Captain Cook and
Mhm.
did the snorkeling there. So we opted to hike down because that was part of what we wanted to do on our trip. So making that a whole event was like to my husband and I was an amazing day. We loved like hiking down there and then going snorkeling and then hiking back. And the kids really enjoyed it. I imagine we'll get more into the, things that we should have done before we
Yes,
went.
we'll get there.
Um yeah. But, just like having them more comfortable with snorkeling, obviously. So that one for sure was well worth it. The snorkeling was amazing. And then the other thing that we did, at least for me, was a lot of times you hear about black sand beaches or a green sand
Mhm.
beach or this, that, and you're like, yeah, it's kind of black or yeah, it's fine. But we did so Mahana Beach, hopefully I'm saying that right, but you can either like pay and get driven there or you can do the hike to the beach. And so it's a green sand beach. And it
Yes.
was like just the whole environment around it and the cliffs and the actual green sand was just so cool. So to be able to hike there, so we hiked it with our kids, obviously. And like the kids were like, yeah, it's green. And I was like, Dan and I were both like, well, this is really cool. Like, this is really green.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And
Well,
just like the whole like cliffs and the crashing water. And that was a really neat experience as well.
yeah. What was the hike like? Like, I've heard that there's not a lot of shade and that it's like, what can you describe the hike or a little bit
Yeah.
like how long it is and what the experience is like?
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head how long it was. There definitely is no shade,
Mhm.
and it's very dusty, so it's kind of along like, it's very easy, it's flat, so that's not an issue. It is on the longer side, if I recall, but it was really hot, and there are people that drive out there themselves as well, so you have to kinda be watching for vehicles. There wasn't a ton of vehicles, but it is just one of those things where you're like, "Oh, a Jeep's coming, we need to move over and make sure that we're not in the way." So, but you're also on the coast the whole time. So it's pretty beautiful, right? Like you got these great
Yeah,
views, but you definitely want your sunscreen and all of that for the hike.
for sure. Yeah, gotta protect yourself for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any, like, unexpected or serendipitous moments that made your trip extra special?
Definitely the volcano erupting, and even though we were like, "Why did it wait till the last place that we were at?" But, knowing also that it was only like, it in hindsight only lasted 13 hours, having gone and made it there and saw it, and then we also went up by the observatory as we drove that way, so we also got to stop and see, like, all of the stars without having to make that a special trip, so that
That's
whole
amazing.
experience was really cool,
It
and
sounds
being out in the
like the
dark.
best way to, like, end your trip too.
And you know what? You're right. Like it was like because we were already like, okay, we're at our last location. We're probably just going to be doing mostly beach time now. So getting to go back there and actually experience it. I feel like if we had left and not gotten, because it was such a focus for our trip because we knew the possibility was there, I think it would have been disappointing to leave. And even though the kids maybe they don't always seem so enthusiastic about things, I think it'll stick with them. Like, "Oh, remember when we saw that volcano erupting?" At the time, I think they don't always process how cool it is, but they're able to come back to it later, so I think that that's
Oh, totally. My kids are exactly the same way. Like, I think we take them all over the world, and sometimes I wonder, like, gosh, why did we bring them there? Because it didn't seem like they had a good time. And then, like, 2 years later, I'll hear them telling a friend about like a special experience we had in another country that I'm like, you were paying attention, or like you like it's fascinating to me what sticks with them, even though on the outside it doesn't seem like they're that interested. It
Yeah.
really does make a difference.
Yeah, and they always bring it up at the most random times, like, "Remember when we were
Yes.
there?" I'm like, "What? How do you remember that?" But yeah,
And some
so
specific detail that maybe a tour
yes.
guide, like, said, like, off the cuff, it's like, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Sometimes I have to be like, "Okay, what are you talking about? Can you explain more?
Yes.
Like, where were we actually?" Because sometimes I don't always remember what country we were in or what,
Yeah.
um, especially when they were smaller, but they will remember those things, and I'm like, "Okay, you're gonna need to, like, run me through this memory because I can't place what you're talking about."
Oh, my kids' memories are way better than mine.
So, I blame them.
Absolutely, always. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about one of my favorite things, which is food in Hawaii. What was the best meal that you had on the Big Island, and why was it so good?
Yeah, so, I'll be honest, we didn't eat out a lot, that
Missed opportunity.
I know, and you know what, to be honest, that is something that we do a lot on our trips is, we get Airbnbs, we cook a lot for ourselves just to keep the budget down. So, this one in particular, we knew going to Hawaii was gonna be a little bit more expensive, so as we were booking it, we had made sure that we had places that we could cook meals, and don't forget, at the time that we were there, the exchange rate between the Canadian dollar and the US dollar was, like it was pretty bad. So,
Yeah,
we were
that's a good
also
point.
like, not only is it expensive, but on top of that, when you're, paying $1.45 or whatever it is, it makes a big difference. That being said, we did go out to eat. I would say the shave ice that we had, we went to Akaka Falls State Park, and there's
Yeah.
like a little town outside of there, and there's the Aloha General Co. And they had their shave ice there was like, we were all like, oh my God,
Oh,
this is
yay.
amazing. So that was a really big part for it. And then when we were in Hilo, Cafe Pesto, we ate there a couple of times. It was
That place is
amazing.
so good. Yeah.
So good. So
Yeah.
we had a one night where we were trying to go. can't remember. We were trying to go someplace else and it ended. Oh, no. There was a food truck that had tacos, but my
Mhm.
kids really wanted the nachos. And so we tried to go and they didn't have any chips. So, okay,
Oh.
so fine. We all had tacos the first night. So we went back the second night and they still didn't have they didn't have
Oh.
guac and they didn't have chips. So we were like, oh, we're not gonna so we went back for a second night at Cafe Pesto because my kids were just like thought it was the best thing ever. So
That's awesome. If you could relive one day of your trip, what day would it be and why?
if I had to relive just one day of our trip, we did this Puna hiking trail in the Hawaiian Paradise Park. And that hiking trail was just like, I don't want to use the word magical, but it was like magical. It was, these overhanging trees, and there was, these cars that basically nature had taken over and were growing through, and just the whole hike itself, it still had some of the old cobblestone, and knowing that this was this old historic road that they used to use. And then it ends at this stunning beach with sea turtles. Just it was that hike. And I know people are yeah, hike in the trees, but I don't know, there was something really special about it. So I'm trying not to say the manta rays. Sorry. I'm trying to think of something else other than the manta rays.
Right. We know the manta rays are a given. Yeah.
So if I could do that hike with the sea turtles at the end and then do the manta rays at the night, that'd be the day.
Oh, that sounds perfect. All right. So I know we alluded to this earlier, but every trip has its hiccups. So I want to know if you ran into any travel mishaps or delays or challenges or things you would do differently.
Yeah. So every trip does have its hiccups, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So right before we left, I was actually on a girls' trip and we were leaving the next day. And that night, my husband texted me and he's like, so our first Airbnb just canceled on us.
Oh, no way.
So we were like, I'm sorry, what now? So that was fun trying to, he had to manage with most of that, but we managed to figure it out. It was actually in the same complex that we had already done. So that was one little thing. Other than that, the trip went fairly smoothly. I would say that parking can sometimes be an issue, but we're definitely early birds. So once we kind of figured that out, we knew that if we were going to a busy beach, we were going to get there early and that was fine, or if parking was limited. So that was, something that I think you really run into anywhere, but it's just kind of figuring it out and, planning your days so that you're not dealing with, or having a backup plan, right? Yeah. So that was about it. The only other thing I would say, and this is probably just a little bit more lack of research on our part, is just knowing about the beaches on the Big Island. And, our kids were so mentally prepared to do a bit of boogie boarding every day. And there
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of places that we went swimming that didn't even have beaches, or it was hard to find actual sandy beaches. So that was a really big learning for us for there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think a lot of people assume that all the Hawaiian Islands are pretty similar. And so when they think Hawaii beaches and the Big Island is it's so unique. It's just such a unique island that I think that that's not emphasized enough, that it's not usually the island you go to if you're looking for a beachy vacation, but it's definitely good for hiking and snorkeling and volcanoes, obviously all the outdoor adventure stuff. That's my go-to island for sure.
And that's why we picked it, really, was for all of the
Yeah.
hiking and stuff. We just kinda had this idea that, oh, and at the end of the day after our hike, we're gonna go sit on the beach, or we'll do, a beach day in between. And we managed around it, but, it wasn't without, an extra trip to Walmart to buy, water shoes so that, we could
Exactly.
swim off the rocks and stuff like that. So it was just, again, could have done more research.
Totally. Well, no, I'm glad that you brought up water shoes because normally I tell people that you don't really need water shoes in Hawaii because, you're not supposed to walk on the coral and stuff like that. And so all the other islands, I mean, I really think you don't need them, but the Big Island, I feel 100% you need them. Even the beaches right outside of the resorts, it's lava rocks and it is hard. And especially with little kids, you're definitely going to want to make sure that they have water socks, water shoes on. It's the only island that I wear water shoes consistently because, I've got my precious little feet and I don't want them all cut up by the rocks and everything. And so it's something that I'm always trying to make sure people know is that that water shoes on the Big Island are a super good idea.
Yeah, and that's I mean, that was the big part of it is, like, so much of the lava runs right into the
Hmm.
water, so a lot of times, if you're going swimming or like Captain Cook, like we talked about, we
Yeah,
didn't wanna carry flippers all the way down there, but we're like, "But how are we gonna manage walking on these rocks to get into the water,
exactly.
without water shoes?" So it was something we knew we had to bring there. That was one little part we figured out before.
Good. I'm glad you figured that out before anyone got injured, for sure. Was there anything that didn't quite live up to your expectations on the Big Island?
I mean, I think, like I said, the beaches, and I hate to like, say that they didn't live up to expectations because that was really just not knowing. And now that we know, other than that, we did go to the Kailua Beach Park. Hopefully I said that right, which was known as like a snorkeling school.
Hmm.
And so it has, like, this protected bay, and it's got, like, it's protected by this offshore reef and stuff for gentle water, but what we didn't really appreciate was that, like, even if it's a little bit windy, the currents there were so strong that everybody
Yeah,
that was trying to snorkel there was in such a tight little space, it was really, like it was not enjoyable, and we did
yeah,
it as, like, a practice before we hiked down to Captain Cook Memorial, so the kids could practice with their snorkeling gear,
yeah. That's super
um
smart.
except it was so windy that day and the currents were so strong and everybody was trying to stay in and there was no room. Like it was just it didn't end up being as good as I think it should have been. So that one was a little bit of a disappointment, but other than that, I couldn't really list anything else
That's
that didn't
great. I
live up.
mean, if that's the
Yeah.
only complaint, like that's not bad.
Exactly.
Yeah. Did you experience any like tourist traps or overrated attractions?
Because our trip was so focused on hiking and then like some of the beaches, we didn't really pay for a whole lot of things.
Hmm.
Um so it didn't feel overly busy, it didn't feel like we did anything that we're like, "This isn't worth it." Yeah, so for us, because our focus was and I think we made the right choice with the right island with our focus, it turned
Absolutely.
out really great, and we have no regrets about that.
That's perfect. Well, you brought up
Yeah.
costs. And so I'm kind of curious about like, how did the costs compare to what you expected? Were there any like budget surprises or anything? I know Hawaii is expensive and the with the Canadian dollar versus the US dollar that wasn't in your favor this trip.
Yeah, yeah. We always had in our head that Hawaii was going to be a very expensive trip, especially talking to other people. When we started looking into it, we found some great flights, so we jumped on it. We were like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely, let's do it. This is perfect for February." Hotels were probably a little bit more expensive than we were hoping they would be, but we weren't unhappy with any of it. Our budget actually ended up coming in much lower than we expected.
Oh,
Probably
that's wonderful.
because yeah, probably because we did so much hiking and didn't pay for a lot, but we also did, all of the things that you do. We shopped at Costco when we got
Mhm.
there. We made sure we had like easy snacks and stuff like that that we could bring. We cooked a lot of meals. So we didn't stay at a resort.
Mhm.
So we had just been in Mexico in December, and at the tail end of that trip, we were at a resort. So we're like, well, we feel like we've just done that.
Yeah.
Um, we bought some of the stuff there, going to Walmart and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So we brought carry-ons. We didn't have to pay for, luggage fees or any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, and we were able to find like some really decent like price like water shoes and beach towels and boogie boards. So
Perfect.
because that was the one thing that the kids wanted as well was boogie boards, and
Mhm.
we're like, well, we're not going to buy that in Canada if we could even
No.
find it.
No.
So
And
it
not
was
in
nice to
in February.
right? Exactly. You can't even find bathing suits in February. So it was
Yeah.
nice to be able to go down there and just buy that stuff when we were there. And then, as we typically do, on our last day, we find some kids that don't have
Mhm.
them and pass them along and
That's what we do
make some
too,
kids
with the
smile.
pool
So,
noodles and all of that.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Well, you kinda talked about that you do carry on only. Was
mhm.
there something that you wished you had packed but didn't, or something that you brought that you didn't use on your trip?
Um, so we had actually bought our own snorkel gear before we went down.
Ah,
We
okay.
didn't bring flippers down. We expected to be snorkeling, I think, more than we did, and
Mhm.
we wanted to be able to just do it on our own. So, we've had some mishaps on some other snorkeling trips, so we just wanted to make sure the kids were, like, getting in the water and more comfortable with it. We didn't actually end up using it as much as we thought we would, but we were so glad to have it because, the Captain Cook Memorial and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, we packed rain jackets, which we never used,
Oh,
so that was
interesting,
nice.
because
Yep.
February on the Big
Yeah.
Island, I mean, that can be really rainy.
Yeah, so, we actually had fantastic weather. we like 2 of the days that we were driving from place to place, we had rain, but then when we
Mhm.
got where we were going, it had stopped raining, so we
Oh,
really didn't
wonderful.
even use them. If anything, I'd say that, like, we used what we brought, except we brought more clothes, which, you know how that goes, you bring all this clothes and you're like, "Oh, but we're gonna, like, wear these shorts for an hour a day," so you just wear the same ones for 4 days, so
Absolutely.
I'm like, "Well, I
Absolutely.
guess we didn't need that much clothes." If anything, we bought more things when we were there than we were expecting to.
Yeah. How was your
Yeah.
luggage coming back home? Were you still able to do carry-on?
Yep. Yep.
Nice.
I managed to well, boogie boards, obviously, we left, but we brought home our
Right.
water shoes and our beach towels and all of that stuff and, shoved it in there. It all fits.
I love it. So now's your time to be able to help other travelers plan their trips to Hawaii. And I'm curious if there's one thing that you think you did really well in planning your trip that you'd recommend to others.
I would say I know people tend to want to see everything,
Hmm.
and making that decision to just go to one island and stay there. I think my husband, he did most of the, like, planning on where we were gonna go and how long we were gonna stay at each place. Really worked out well because we had days where we could do hiking, we had days that we could do beach, and it was such a good mix of all of it. The 2 weeks didn't even feel like 2 weeks, and we just did the Big Island, so I can't imagine even in that 2 weeks having thrown in, like, another island or 2.
Hmm.
Like, it just felt like it was nice to get to know each place. Our kids were we were all comfortable and well rested and, we had 3 nights at every place, so I wasn't feeling like I was constantly packing or unpacking our stuff because that's usually how it goes when we move a lot.
Totally.
So I have to spend a ton of time packing everybody's stuff. So yeah, like I really enjoyed going there and like doing the island properly and seeing all of it. Now I can say I have seen the Big Island.
Mhm. No, I totally agree with you. I think especially, like, out of all the islands, the Big Island just really does need the most time because it's so much bigger than people think. Just the drive times between all the places, I think you did it really in a smart way of picking several places to stay so you could explore those areas because it's just like, I'm always surprised how long we're in the car to get anywhere on the Big Island.
Yeah. And I actually had felt that way a little bit in some of the other trips that I had done
Mhm.
too, that like it takes a long time to drive to some of these places. So it's nice to be able to stay closer and minimize that time in the car. And even in like the last place we stayed, like we had to drive half an hour to get to the beach every day. Now, keep in mind,
Yeah.
we were like purposely staying in an Airbnb to be a little bit further away. But that was, a big part of our day that we spent every day driving. So anytime you can minimize that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. If you could do your trip all over again, what would you do differently?
Well, I probably would have asked more questions about the beaches for sure. Just
Mhm.
to not necessarily that I would have changed anything, but that I would have went into it with different expectations and had been able to set that expectation with my kids because they had in their head that they were going to be boogie boarding every single day. And we did find some great beaches for that, but it
Mhm.
wasn't like at the tail end of every day that we could just go hang on the beach or do a hike in the morning and then beach in the afternoon. So I think just setting those expectations. I'm not unhappy about it. I just had we known that, you know what, in this part of the island, you're probably not going to find any boogie boarding beaches, so don't expect it. And then I would have definitely had my kids practice with their snorkel gear more at home. So my older one is in competitive swimming, so they use snorkels in the pool. So she was definitely much more comfortable with it. But my
Mhm.
younger, even though we've taken them on other snorkel tours, they've always just worn their goggles because they're not as
Oh,
and so they
yeah.
kinda, like, put their head in and take him out, and that's just a comfort level with being in the water, and also how much we actually do beach vacations, because a lot of
Mhm.
times we're hiking. So I would have just had my youngest practice a little bit more. He managed it, he did great, he put in, like, the proper goggles and all of that, but I think it would have been nice to have him a little bit more comfortable with that, even if it was just at the pool, right?
Totally. Yeah, that's a really
Yeah,
good point. It's something that you can practice at home. Even in
exactly.
the bathtub. I know we've done that before with our kids when they're little, is just practice in the bathtub and just to get comfortable with it because I mean, it's such a foreign foreign concept. It just feels, like it doesn't feel natural to like stick your head in the water and be able to breathe and stuff. It's
Yeah.
it's a lot to process.
Even for them, like, okay, you can't breathe through your nose, like, your mouth
Yeah.
only, and to, like, okay, now I need to do that, right? And he
Yeah.
wanted to use his snorkel with his goggles, and I'm like, "No, because if you accidentally breathe in, like, your nose when you're not like, I just nope.
Yeah.
We need to do this
No, it's
properly."
tricky. Well, and every kid is so different too on what they can do,
Yeah, and comfort level in the water, right?
Mhm.
Not everybody
Absolutely.
feels the same. So,
No, totally. Do you have any tips for first-time visitors who might be feeling overwhelmed about planning their Hawaii vacation?
I mean, I'm lucky enough that I get to know you. So, like, when we decided to go there, you were the first person that I went to and just like, we had a
Yeah,
quick chat about it. So, obviously go to the experts makes a big difference. I wish I had, come to you more specifically about the beaches, but if you know somebody, I know it can get overwhelming. I get that. So, having somebody that you know that you can go to and ask some specific questions makes a big difference. And then, I don't feel like I get Hawaii, but, like, it's not the place to be overwhelmed, it's the place to, like, relax and chill out, so, while having a backup plan is a good idea, I think it's just one of those, like, try not to stress about it and enjoy where you are.
totally. I mean, it's such a beautiful place,
Yeah,
so it's yeah, you wanna be relaxed, you don't wanna be stressing out about your itinerary or anything.
exactly.
So I know that you visited Oahu, Kauai, and the Big Island. If somebody only had time to visit one of those islands based on your trips, which one would you recommend and why?
Based on what I have done now, I didn't travel to the other islands with my family traveling the way that we do, so they were a little bit different. One was a girls' trip. One was, with a group of friends. So they were all a little bit different. I would probably say it really depends what you're going there for. So we knew we wanted to hike, so that's why we picked the Big
Mhm.
Island. So I think it's really important to know what you want your trip to look like and then look at the different islands for that. So I think you would be better to speak to that, but just like which one is better for the different activities.
That's a good point because they really are so different. And I think, people think that, oh, you can just go to any island and they're interchangeable, but they are just so unique. And it really does depend on what you're looking for adventures, waterfalls, hiking, beach vacation, shopping, attractions. I mean, they're just so different depending on the islands for sure.
Yeah, even the
Yeah.
feel, I'd say, like on the Big Island, like Kona and Hilo are quite big, which
Hmm.
was quite a surprise to me because I wasn't used to that. Having like I've been to Honolulu, but I knew that going into it, but the other ones, like, they
Yeah.
don't really have any great big cities like that, or at least not that I went to, so that
Yeah.
was, like, a bit of a shock to me.
Yeah. That's a really good point. So I know that you and your family travel a lot. And how do you think that this trip to Hawaii compared to other kind of beach vacations you've done anywhere in the world?
I would say, if anything, I probably enjoyed hiking on Hawaii more than some of the hikes we've tried to do in other places, and I feel like the weather and the temperatures in Hawaii allowed a lot more for that as opposed to going to some place like Mexico where it's extremely humid and extremely hot. Like I go to those
Uh-huh.
places and I'm like, I don't feel like hiking when I'm here. Or, you go to
Yeah.
like we've been to Thailand and I'm like, I don't really feel like hiking in the jungle because it's so hot.
Hmm.
Whereas I felt there, like, yeah, it's hot, but like you get in some shade and it just it's such a great temperature. At least it was when we were there that it was
Hmm.
comfortable to go hiking and end at the beach, still warm enough for the beach and doing those active adventures. So that's what I would say was like really nice about going there.
Yeah. It sounds super manageable. Like
Yeah.
if hiking is a priority for you, it's a manageable place to do it. That's
Yep.
great insight. So do you think you'll be going back? And if so, what's on your Hawaii bucket list for next time?
Oh man. You know what? Right now we don't have any plans to go back only because we have so many other places we want to go.
I
I
know
mean,
your bucket list is so long.
we were just talking to our kids on the weekend and we were talking about like, man, we only have like 5 summer trips left to do with our daughter before she's gone that aren't already planned, so, like, we need to
Yeah.
start thinking about where we wanna go and how we split that time. Having said that, we actually never really know where we wanna go. It like, we'll come to December and we're like, "Oh, we got a February trip to plan. Where should we go?"
Yeah.
And it's usually how we're feeling at the moment, how flights are looking, what's
Yeah.
going on in the world, and so, who's to say? We could be back there next year for all I know.
It's not, yeah, I know there's lots of factors to consider for sure. All right. So finally, this is my last question for you, Celine. Can you sum up your trip to the Big Island in just 3 words?
Okay, this is gonna come as a really big shock to you when I say these 3 words, okay? Volcano, Manta Rays.
I love it. That totally does sum up your trip. Well, thank you so much, Celine, for being on Hawaii Travel Made Easy. Where can people find you if they want to know more about Banff, Canada?
Oh, yeah, well, thank you for having me. It was actually really fun reliving the trip and going through some of the pictures to refresh my memory and stuff. Yeah, anybody coming to Banff, you can find me at travelbanffcanada.com and, basically that as part of Instagram or Facebook or anything. Any of those places will do. You can usually get a hold of me through one of those channels.
I love that. Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd love to hear from you. Have you visited Hawaii? What was your experience like? Send me a DM on Instagram at Hawaii Travel with Kids or check my blog for more Hawaii travel tips. And if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review because it helps more travelers plan amazing Hawaii vacations. Mahalo for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Aloha.